Welcome to Rev Up Your Potential with Hilda Gann, the stories about entrepreneurs, business leaders, and HR professionals and their successes and struggles along their journey. In this podcast, we also discuss the HR challenges that people face and the tips and strategies that have helped them. If you love to learn through storytelling, join us. And my guest today is John Robertson. He is the founder and owner of Fortlog Services. You're in for a treat because he takes crisis management the traditional way and transforms it into something as an opportunity. I'm looking forward to talking to him about how he got there and what he does to help us through crisis situations. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Hilda. It's great to be here and be invited as a guest. So thank you so much.
Well, I think, a lot of us have gone through crisis in a small way and large ways over the last few years. And so I really welcome the opportunity to hear more about what you do and how you can help us transform our ways of thinking of crisis. So tell us a little bit about your company.
Okay, so Fortlog Services incorporated, a few years, like 2011, but been around for 30-ish years doing this kind of work. And one of the things that happened was I got really tired, and maybe you can relate, Hilda, that you ever noticed how sometimes people do, and I know the cliche, do the same things over and over and hope for different results. And one of the things in variety of different roles that I've had for community member, small town community member, as a pastor, and doing crisis response for employee assistance programs or EAPs, I realized a lot of times people were putting Band-Aids on a cut jugular instead of, okay, what are we going to do about the root rather than just treating the stuff above the ground? And so what came out of that for me was, okay, how do we stop reacting and choose to respond? How do we stop the woulda, coulda, shouldas and be proactive? And so the ethos that I teach from is run towards the roar instead of running away from it, which is most normal humans do. So that's kind of how I got into it, was just there's got to be a better way.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. That oftentimes people are uncomfortable about difficult situations, and crisis is probably one of the most difficult situations. And I like how you describe your business, because you said traditional crisis response to opportunity to thrive. And in Chinese, the character for danger is actually has the part of the root words is opportunity.
Well, and if you look at how the actual word crisis is spelled, it's spelled with a K, not with a C, because everybody knows what crisis, threat to goals, something knocks us out of our game, and there's a third quality that interrupts our plans. But it's the fourth one for me that matters. Crisis is that point when the old way is no longer sustainable.
Yeah.
Okay. So in sports, it's called a turning point, a defining moment, or a refining moment, where what I thought was important to this point, going through that refiner's fire, is called in smelting, to, you know what, I want something even more pure, whether it be a marriage, a relationship, parenting, an employee. I want to be that kind of leader that people trust, respect, even when they don't like me.
So how did you get into this business? I know you said you were tired of it, but what was there a catalyst or your background that really helped you to say, I need to do something about this and I have the skills and tools to do this?
I think for me, where it came from was it just a sports ethos kind of mindset. So if a person's playing a game that we don't enjoy, it doesn't matter to me what it is, jigsaw puzzles, euchre, physical games like soccer, If I get injured playing one of those things, if I lose 3 or 4 euchre hands and I don't enjoy the card game, I'm probably going to quit. I'm probably going to walk away.
Hmm.
But I also noticed that when people really enjoy what they do, even when they get a wallop, they find a way to get back in the game. So, what would happen if we took that approach towards living, towards life? Define what's valuable, define what we are willing to be faithful or loyal to, and then what we're passionate about. And so, part of what the journey for me was, okay, so when I got called to a crisis situations, and I can name many of them from where we used to live in a small community. There was an employer with several hundred people coming, and living in a community of 5,000 people, maybe 4,600. And this employer suddenly decides that no, we're not going there, unplugs and shuts everything down. So you can imagine the psychological, emotional Charlie horse that many people were experiencing. And so, okay, well, do you love your work? Well, I don't know, but I really love living here.
Hmm.
Okay, well, you got to decide which one you're going to be faithful to, where you're living or to that job, because for whatever reason. And so for me, I got tired of diagnosis model of living. So, well, this is John's problem, or that's John's problem, or that's John's problem. Okay, so what are we going to actually do to stop the sick care model and grow healthy? And there's not a defining moment. It's been a whole way of thinking, and it goes right back to one of my degrees is in psychology, and it goes right back to why do we love to put labels on things and focus on what's wrong instead of, so what are your strengths? What are you passionate about? What's of value to you? And how can I encourage you to grow that?
And I like how you said earlier, it's finding people's passions or uniqueness, because no matter what obstacles you have, if you love to do it, you'll just overcome and ride that. It's almost like it's an elixir. But when you hate
Absolutely.
it, it just drags you down like quicksand, right?
Absolutely. And passion, I mean, part of that, the teaching, the run towards the roar teaching, coaching is around passio fidelis. Passio being the passionate root word, and fidelis meaning the word that we use today for fidelity, for loyalty, for faithfulness.
Yeah, be faithful. Yeah.
And and so one of the things that happens is crisis. I call it the hot water teabag moment. If we ever want to find out what's important to a person or an organization, put them in hot water and watch. What's inside always leaks out. And Hilda, without having any backstory, please don't use any names. I can personally guarantee you that you will have had those moments where you're in hot water, whatever that means for you. And people or an employer, an organization that you thought was always going to be there, poof, was not there in any way supportive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
flip side of that is just as true. People that you didn't even know genuinely cared, rolled up their sleeves and said, what can I do?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I teach my rev up process, hence the name of the show, and uniqueness is a piece of
Sure.
that. And in uniqueness, sometimes during our hot water teabag
Yeah.
moments, those unique qualities that are so positive can, what we call double trouble, get kind of ugly. So a person who's a power person, and you admire them for making those decisions in those stressful moments, they become dictatorial and prescriptive. You do it my way because we do that. So there's always this ugly side to us, and when we get overly stressed, you talk about this roar thing, is that part of your business strategy? Is that a name that you use? Tell us more about that.
So roars are different for everybody. So it could be seeing a dead animal on a road. It could be a good friend being diagnosed with cancer. It could be change in the workplace. It could be empty nesting. A roar is a very subjective thing because everybody's roar is different.
Okay.
But animal instinct, to which humans fall into that category, is fight, flight, freeze, appease whenever we hear a roar. So the humans are the only ones that we can train and equip to run toward the roar. There's no other species. You can get into a debate about whether it's trainable or not, but humans can run toward the roar if we're training for it. So, if going back to your analogy, if I'm focused on my uniqueness, then part of that training and coaching will prepare me to run towards it when I'm feeling the heat.
Hmm.
So, for example, in an organization, what's the focus? And I'm not talking about a vision and a mission. I'm talking about what's the focus? What does it mean to put the puck in the net or the ball in the end zone or the ball in the hoop? What does that focus mean? Because that's how we define if we're moving the ball down the field.
Yeah.
And what happens is I might understand my uniqueness, but if I'm not clear on my focus, what leaks out in hot water may not be what I wanted to leak out.
Gotcha. 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 Now, I know in conversations we've had prior to this session, you talked about you worked as a pastor.
Did, yes.
Yes. I- is that where that kind of, I mean, gave you the experience and then gave you the I need to do more in this area of supporting people through crisis?
Partly, but I think it was almost always for me something that a community was supposed to do. So, for those people who have that strong community, what we used to see was the church built at a center of a community,
Hmm.
and everything was built around the church. As church has lost its influence,
Yeah.
and that's, I'm not getting into churchianity and religiousness, I'm
No.
talking about the reality of it. We don't have something that works like a tetherball pole for us to pivot around as a community. And what happens in the workplace? Okay, if Billy Bob or Susie Q gets a Charlie horse, here, call EAP. Well, most of us won't call an EAP. Most of us don't like using that four-letter word, help. So if we're going to build a model, then really what I'm talking about is let's go back to that community model, which used to have church at the center, and therefore the community of the church was the community of support. I can go back to our veterans. That model was the Royal Canadian Legion.
Right. Yep.
And what for years we had service clubs. Yeah, I know of numerous super service clubs who did incredible things for the people in their community. And so, maybe 30 years ago, I would be unemployed. But today, people don't have that front porch therapy model where grandma and grandpa Smith sat on the front porch. We could tell them about life and our parents and work and everything. And when we were done, we felt better. They hit delete. So for me, it's building that community, which is what a church is supposed to be, but building that community where people want to work, leaders are followed and trusted, and people actually know how to thrive.
So in my business, I try to help companies from that workplace support, that being the community and that being, place where most people can spend 8 hours of their waking day. How would you talk about helping a community, which is the work community,
Yes.
thrive and survive? Using your analogy with
Sure.
veterans and church, let's give me an analogy from that workplace
So, for
perspective.
example, real-time scenario, I'm not going to give the specifics, but a real-time scenario, one workplace, they were caught between leaders genuinely caring for their people,
Hmm.
people feeling like the leaders are just doing a checklist approach to
Mm,
caring. So we started walking through, well, what's the focus? What does it mean for you as a leader to help your people thrive? What does success mean?
yep.
And when I asked the question, I heard crickets. So, okay, well, the first thing we need to do is let's figure out what you mean, because communication
Yeah.
is never what is said, always what is heard.
Hmm.
And then clarify that focus. Then we walk through the values. Why are you doing this? What's your motivation? What's the real oomph behind this effort? And if the values are not in writing, sorry, let me word that as a negative. The value as a positive. The values have to be named and defined
Yeah.
so they can be described. But what's happening is people name a value, but they don't communicate it. So what you hear as respect and what I hear as respect, we're not going to
Mm,
play well together because we don't share.
yeah.
In the workplace community, what's the focus? What's your motivation? And then who are your key people that you need to have on board?
And that resonates so much with what my thinking is. So many companies really need to understand what their mission, vision, and values are,
Mhm.
and that is the foundation that permeates everything. Whether you're hiring people, you're creating your business operations, or you're identifying who your key clients should be. If you don't have that articulated, like you say, in writing, like, how are you supposed to hire the right people that resonate with that? How are you supposed to educate those managers who you hired to follow those values? Like, it's all interconnected, and
Absolutely.
it's that I hear what you're saying using this example. It was that us versus them mentality. No matter how, if you ask me how I'm feeling today, if there's a trusting relationship, I'm going to tell you, right? But if I'm thinking, why are you asking me? Is it because that us versus them mentality will never create that trusting relationship?
And the other thing that people don't, and this is why I get into some of the communication tactics, because many people aren't even aware of how it gets done. So, for example, John, how are you today? Good. Well, there's nothing for me to answer because the person's already answered the question. How are you today? Good. Well, if I'm not good, what am I supposed to say?
I love it when you go to the doctor's office and they say, "How are you?" I said, "Well, it wouldn't be here if
Exactly.
I was
Yeah.
good."
Yeah. And let's have a little perspective to this absolutely. And so, for example, and I never forgot it, but Mr. Newton back in the day when we used to call people Mr. and Mrs. And he had bone cancer. He was in the hospital, and I was 17, 18 maybe, and we went in to visit him. And he said, John, don't ever forget, in a world of presents, people need presents. And I looked at him and I thought, too much morphine painkiller. And he must have read my mind because he said, and no, that is not the drugs speaking, John. And I said, okay. And he said, John, in a world of PRESENTS, people need PRESENCE.
Oh, that I thought he wanted a chocolate chip cookie or
Yeah,
something for
exactly.
you to bring him.
And one of the things that I brought to everything I do is how are we providing ENCE to people? Because ENTS can be words, can be, well, if you need time off, Hilda, go ahead, don't worry about it. And we do all these presents
Yeah,
instead of just being still and listening.
yeah, yeah. And it's such a great gift when you are a manager and you have that relationship with your employee, and that you're there to nurture and foster their growth rather than to supervise. And
And that's that key of career development or
yeah,
people
yeah,
development
yeah,
instead of performance management. Because performance management is based on that old model of you shouldn't have, oh, check,
yeah,
you did,
yeah, yeah,
versus career development is built around what I was just walking through. It's the focus, it's the motivation, quoting this wise woman, it's
yeah,
your uniqueness, it's your passion, and therefore, revving it up is actually about developing people to the point where they
yeah.
thrive.
Yeah, and that gets back to your opportunity to thrive.
Yep.
Today, when I'm guiding people to develop their performance management tool, I really show them best practices and past performance. So I get them to change the word from a performance management review, because you don't want to manage, to a performance development review, to really help people
Mhm.
thrive in that opportunity. I want to talk about, you said you've been at this for about 30 years, even though the business has been around for 11. What is the one piece of advice you would give to other people, either developing their career or deciding to start a business or on their entrepreneurial journey?
If you're not clear on what your passion is and why you're doing it, quit.
I just laugh, but yeah, so true, right?
Because it's no different than I was told, and it was one of those sage counsel by a Dutch couple, and he was old when I knew him, so he's probably gone now. But and he said, "Don't ever forget, John. You will never work harder for anything on anything in your life and get paid less than if you want to have a great marriage with great kids." When we are starting a business, entrepreneurial, when we want to grow forward, when we want to thrive or change, it is a lot of work. To be blunt, it's a lot easier to drift and go with the flow. It won't take you to where you want to go,
Yeah.
but it's a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, if you love what you do, then it just doesn't seem like, work. I
Absolutely.
remember I'm a passionate educator, and I strive to get enough education and knowledge technically so that I could teach. And
Right.
then I'm sitting in the library saying, I'm being paid to sit here to learn stuff to be able to teach the staff on this. And I thought, isn't this cool? I'm getting paid to do this. So I agree with you. Let's talk a little bit more. We've kind of talked about crisis. We've talked about the workplace. What would you identify maybe as the top kind of two HR struggles, headaches right now, and some tips and strategies you would have for organizations?
So, two things. One is everybody loves to blame leadership,
Mm,
and doesn't matter what, nobody's really clear on what leadership means, but everybody loves to blame them. And the second thing is HR can actually make their work more challenging if they're staying in the accountability culture. Because I call the accountability culture the P culture, because it's the policy, procedures, protocols, performance, and productivity, and the beloved paperwork. And when HR is probably one of the most influential leaders because everybody listens to them. And if they move away from the accountability culture of writing out a policy and grow it towards the values anchored culture, it actually reduces their workload because many times now they're not playing referee about a policy, they're having a value anchors discussion. And HR people can have one of the most influential roles because they can communicate between senior leaders, whatever that means, and frontline, and be part of yet not belong, but be part of both cultures.
And that's such a tricky thing to navigate,
Absolutely.
because I know from experience, some people will say that HR person is too pro staff, or that HR person is too pro management, and a sage kind of HR person knows how to earn respect on both
Absolutely.
sides. I mean, that to me is always been my kind of reason to be, and to guide people. And I've had that compliment by saying, yeah, you know how to manage, and it's not easy, but
Well,
it's
if it was
something that you
easy,
need to do, to
if
be
it was
effective.
easy, everybody would be doing it, right?
It be nice if everybody
Wouldn't
could
it?
do it?
Yeah.
but
And
but it is a piece of advice, is to try to understand that's a key role, and you need to learn that experience of how do you balance both and become
the key,
respected for both.
the key in that goes back to defining things.
Hmm.
So, what does one mean when they say, I want to be respected? What does one mean when they want to be trusted?
Yeah.
I'm the only person that can teach you what I mean by trusted.
Yeah.
It's not your definition for me. But but the second part of that is, it's a really simple question that I ask consistently. How do we want people to describe us non-physically?
Say
Because
that again. Just repeat that again, because that's key. You have so many interesting insights. I'm sure people are going to say, "Wow, wow."
well, and it's a little simple discussion. How do you want people to describe you non-physically? And the key is non-physically.
Yeah, yeah. Like, does she have black hair or whatever? But yeah,
Or John has a bachelor's and master's
yeah,
degree,
yes,
he's certified. Well, you know what? That doesn't matter when we're leading.
yes, yeah.
What matters is, how does it used to be called character, what you are in the dark when nobody's watching.
Hmm.
And and so therefore, what's my definition of how do I want to be described non-physically? And out of that, it has to be defined positively. It's not, well, I don't want to be this and I don't want to, those negative definers don't work. It has
Yeah,
to be
no, positive certainly can achieve much more and
absolutely.
give you opportunity rather than
Yeah.
pigeonhole you. So I'm going to ask this question: is how would you then describe the legacy, non-physically,
Yeah.
of what you want when you're, down the line, say, "Hey, I'm ready to take it easy, and I would like to be remembered for this."
Well, the acronym that I approach it from is STEP. And I want people to be able to say that John was of service. And that means a willingness to roll up the sleeves, not, well, I'd love to if I could find the time, but the new job's a hassle and yada, yada, yada. So, service, trustability. I want people to know that they could count on me to keep things to myself, but as importantly, that I would speak the truth in love and talk about the elephant in the room, even when it was uncomfortable, but not judgmentally.
Yes, yeah,
Just to say, hey, are you aware a lot of us see this? So service, trustability, and then I invented a word, encourage, which is a cross between equipping and encouragement, or encourage. Because I don't want to praise people. I really don't. I want to encourage them. And sometimes that means first we have to start with equipping people and make sure that they don't actually know how to do what they want to be encouraged. And then principles. I believe that humans are naturally wired to thrive, and we just have to fan that into flame. I also believe that with the right supports, people can thrive. I have core principles that I serve from.
wow. And how do you spell that E word?
Encourage,
Q.
EQUAGE. I don't know if I'm saying it properly.
No,
It's
but
a made up
I just
word.
wanted to make sure they heard it and I heard it correctly.
Yeah.
Well,
And every time I spell it, It's a little different, but
But
I'm
it's
working
got a
on it.
Q in it, so
Yes.
it's the combo. Yeah, because I was thinking, how do I spell that?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I used to use encourageability, but there was a guy in the States who used it for financial stuff. And it's like, no, I'm not talking about financial. So encourage and make it up. It's a cross between equip and encourage,
However you want to spell it.
however you want to spell it. Absolutely.
Well, John, thank you very much for giving us insights to helping us kind of think through the kind of crises that we've been through in our lives for
Mhm.
for various parts of our journey, and to make us mentally think about looking at it as an opportunity to thrive and to understand the roots, whether you're an individual or an organization or a manager. Really appreciate some of your analogies and your acronyms for this. I'm just wondering if you can share with people what's next for you.
For me, I'm working on a resource for leaders, and so I'm guinea pigging it with people before I write it down or put it all in writing. And I'm a firm believer that it starts with a conversation. So I'm excited to see. I've got a couple conversations with different groups, so from First Nations, Indigenous through to corporate, and I'm excited to see what happens. And I'm not sure if your question was also if people wanted to connect with me.
That would be my next question. How do people
Okay,
get a
I'm
hold of
sorry, I'm
you?
stealing your thunder. There we go. So the simplest way to do that is just let's start with a conversation. It's not about selling anything. So go to fortlog.co. So Fortlog, fortlog.co, because I work with people, not .com. We collaborate, coach, colleague. So fortlog.co.cl/rev up. And easiest way, just book a time and let's have a conversation.
Well, thank you very much, John, for joining me. And I thank those who have taken the time to listen. And if you
Absolutely.
like it, subscribe. Put a like button on this wonderful conversation that I've had with John. Thank you again, John, for being here.
Thank you so much, Hilda. And I really enjoyed the conversation. And bless you as you rev up the places you serve.
Thank you for tuning in to Rev Up Your Potential with Hilda Gann. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our podcast on YouTube and Spotify to stay up to date on our latest episodes. For HR tips, news, and strategies, or if you're interested in being a guest on our podcast, visit our website at peoplebrightconsulting.com.